Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, can I get a roll call, please?
Supervisor File?
Here.
Clerk Newbeck here. Treasurer Brown?
Here.
Trustee Hayward?
Here.
Trustee Morocco?
Here.
Trustee Nawamathu? Here. And Trustee Tedder?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great. Next, can I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next on there, we have a board or public announcement. These are board members or individuals in the audience that want to make a statement containing information about a recent upcoming event. Okay. Do we have any? Nope, not in the audience. Anybody online? Nope. Okay, I'll close public. I'm sorry, anybody on the board? Nope. Okay, I will close public announcement, board public announcement, comments. Next one is public comments. Members of the audience will have 5 minutes to come up, and we need your name and address to the center mic here. And that would be for any item that is not on the agenda. Just to make it clear, the thing on the item tonight for the agenda is the millage. So for any public comments besides that, please come up to the mic. You will have 5 minutes. I'll let you know when 4 minutes so you can have a minute to wrap it up. Do we have any public comments from the audience? No? Any public comments online? No? Okay. I will close public comments then. Next on the agenda is a presentation for the police millage option. I do have a short little PowerPoint presentation I want to go through that kind of outlines a little bit of what we're going to be discussing here today. So I'm going to come down. So I don't know if we need a whole lot of backstory on this one since everything has been moving really fast since Tuesday. One of the things I would like to point out is that part of the reason why things are moving fast, and I know the board understands this, but just to kind of reiterate, is that we have a deadline established by the county for anything that we want to put on the November ballot. It has to be turned into the county by 4 o'clock tomorrow. So a lot of the things that we've been doing over the last couple of days, I can appreciate that, you know, for a lot of people, this may seem like we're moving really fast, but that's because we're working against a certain timeline. What we're going to be talking about here tonight is looking at a couple different options. From my perspective as a supervisor, I'm looking at going through and putting back on the ballot a millage for the police. I would like to take a moment first and step back and say that the millage that we currently have of the 2.8282 expired. So as it stands right now, we do not have a millage that will fund the police at all. Okay? So when we talk about any of these options on the millage, and even for the one that was in August, it was not to go back and add it on top of an existing one. It was to replace the one that had already expired. Okay? We're looking at 2 different options. I'm presenting 2 different options here. One is to go through and do there's a legal way of making this statement, a renewal. And the renewals is for 2.8041 mils. I just said that the mills for 25 was 2.8282. There's the Headley rollback, and that's what brings it down to the 2.8041. So in order to be able to legally qualify saying that it's just a renew, we have to make sure that we're doing the Headley rollback and putting that number out, okay? Without getting into the Headley rollback and everything else, because that is a very long, complicated process, let's just say at the end of the day, you'll pay the same, okay? The other option is back in August, we went through and we were looking at a 3.2 mil, which would have been an increase from the 2.82 to the 3.2. That portion of the millage was for the general police fund. The general police fund went from 2.8282 to 3.2 to cover the cost that the county increased back to us. This was not to build anything up. It was strictly a pass-through to cover the increase that Oakland County increased their cost to us as a township, since we're contracting the Oakland County Sheriff Department. So I want to make sure that was clear too. This was not to suddenly put in a bunch of money to go buy a helicopter or anything fun like that. It was just to kind of keep us even for what we have been doing for the last couple of years. The millage it straddled over the contract period. And so that's why we got caught short, because the millage was for the 4 years, the contract was also for 3 years, and just the way it got renewed was in the middle of the millage. And so that's why we had to go up to the 3.2 to get kind of caught back up to where it was, and it was a big jump. For those that remember, the board remembers that I talked about the fact that it worked out to be about a 36% increase over the life of the contract, 9.2 each year. So it was a hefty increase, especially when traditionally, especially when we went back, when the millage first came out, the current millage, the one that just expired, came out, the average increase was around 3%. So when we went through and did the budget and everything, all that, and the millage, it was based on that historical increase. So it was a dramatic increase, and that's why you heard all the supervisors and all the other townships around us screaming and hollering at the county saying, hey, that's not fair that you went and jacked it up that much that fast without any really advance notice, because we had basically 2 months to try to figure out how to suddenly absorb that big of an increase. Okay? So again, tonight, what we're going to be looking at is I'm going to recommend that we either do a straight renewal, which is the 2.8041, which will replace the 2.8282 that's currently expired. Okay? Or look at the 3.2. There's pros and cons of each, and so we're going to look at that going forward. Again, the 2.8041 is not an increase. It is just to replace what we were currently doing that expired at the end of last year. The 3.2 is designed to cover the cost of the increase of the contracts. One obviously gives a little bit more of a landing zone for costs predictable going forward. We have, as articulated to the board, that in 28 and 29, there's 2 different unions at Oakland County Sheriff's Department. They are anticipating, when the budget analyst, Renee, and I went out and talked to them, each of them independently said they're anticipating about a 10% increase in the cost. When we sat down with the board of commissioners, the head of the board, the chair of the commissioners, and the CFO for Oakland County, they also came back and said they are anticipating about a 10% increase. So,
Annually?
Yes.
Annually.
Annually. Sorry, annually. Which is a huge point. Yeah, huge point. Thank you. Obviously, the nice thing, I guess, there about us from a budgeting standpoint, everybody was on the same page about the anticipated costs going forward. We did not share what the other individuals that we talked to. We talked to the union presidents of both the command and the patrol, and then we talked to the CFO and the chair. So the 3.2 gets us back to where we were. That means last year, everything comes in at the same rate. Everything keeps the status quo going forward. The 2.8 will then require subsequent financing coming in from other places. GF, for notes here, is the general fund, right? So from the general fund, if we go with the 2.8041, we're looking that it will maintain itself through the 28th. So we're also looking at possibly changing up the contract period of time, or the millage time frame. Right now, it's 4. We're looking at maybe shortening it to 2. 2 being because of a couple different things. One is that, we had roughly 20 to 25% of the Independence Township voters voted the millage down. Now, that's a percentage of eligible voters, okay, not the actual number. Of the number, it was 52% said no, 48% said yes. So, well, you still had a majority, but it was a small percentage of the total population. But it still resonated with the board. The board understands that there's a certain amount of, I think, 2 things going on there. One is that people are not doing as well as everybody would like to think they are. And I don't mean that from the standpoint of the media and everything else. When you're paying $4 plus a gallon, You know, groceries are expensive, utilities are off the hook on how much those are costing. Any increase is something that you have to go through, and I believe as a government, and the board I know for sure believes this, has to be able to go through and explain why we need the increase. But again, what I want to make sure is that when we look at this, is that the 2.8041 is not an increase. It is just a renewal of the same dollar amount that you would be paying that you did last year. The 3.2 is to get us back up, and yes, it is more, that's why we didn't call it a renewal. It is more, but it's to cover the total cost of the Oakland County Sheriff. There's nothing else baked into that number, okay? In there, the general fund on the transfer, we'd be fine there. If we go over for a period of time, for the 4-year period of time, we would actually see about a $2 million drain off of the general fund, which means we burned through all the police reserve. We do have a police fund that we've been accumulating money in because the original, or the millage before, there was talk about building a substation, a new substation. These guys are in, like maybe almost the length of this, but maybe from that aisle over. It's a pretty small little thing. I'm sure that the undersheriff here wouldn't mind if somebody came down and took a look at it. It's a pretty small, outdated building with a lot of costs for maintenance and so on and so forth. I believe, I wasn't here when that millage first came out, but I believe that's what the intent was, to be able to build a new substation. So we do have money that was built up into that fund to accumulate over time because we had to budget for it. There wasn't enough there initially, so we had to accumulate it over time. So there's about $3.6 million in that account. With going with the 2.8041, in 4 years, we will burn through all of that, plus an additional $2.15 million of the general fund, okay? If we were to go with the 3.2,
That's if it's not renewed, or?
so typically on presentations, we don't respond, I
I
know.
know.
But I would ask the board if they would allow me the permission to answer some questions. Or which,
I would agree, I think so.
Yeah, in this situation, I would think so, for
okay,
sure.
all right.
Yeah, so the 2.15 million drain is assuming this is back on the November ballot and it's not
And
passed?
the 2.8041 is passed,
Excuse me, Chuck.
yes.
He needs to come to the mic so people can hear him and give his name and address
Oh,
if
I'm
we're
sorry.
going to
Okay,
do
at least we
that.
have to do that much.
Please.
Full address, street, or just street or?
Street and
number?
yeah.
John Ingram, 8615 Hidden Acre Court, here in Clarkston. The question is, the 2.15 million drain on the general fund, is that, or it was, if the renewal, or I guess the millage is passed, or put onto the November ballot and passed?
Yes.
That is the drain, or if it's not, or if it doesn't pass in November?
So I'm going to answer that in a little bit more informative way, I think, than probably just a yes or a no. What I want to make sure is clear, it's understood, we don't have a millage now.
Right.
So
Well, we
if-
do through December,
No.
right? Because that's when it was passed.
No, our collection starts in December, so we have nothing to collect. We have zero right now. So
Okay.
if they both
So
fail,
the December taxes, or the taxes we pay this winter in '26
It's
are
gonna be-
for,
the millage that passes or doesn't pass, it will be for the millage that passes in November if one does.
got it, okay.
So if a
It's not for
millage,
what's already passed,
yeah, it's because it was assessed in '25, collected in '26.
okay.
So if we go through and think about this, and I think that an important point to your question is, since we don't have a millage right now, and whatever millage the board decides to go forward with, if they decide to go forward with a millage, or decide not to go forward, let's say they decide not to go forward with the millage, that means 100% of the money then would have to come out of the general fund to fund the police.
Okay,
In that scenario, the general fund, which we talk a lot about how much we have in that general fund, because we've done a good job of saving money for events that we are going forward, and rainy days like today, that fund would be completely depleted by the end of '28.
in 4 years.
No, '28.
28, 2 years, okay.
Yeah, and that would also mean that we're cutting somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.5 million per year out of the parks, because they're a big part of where that general fund money goes towards.
Okay,
Okay? Now, if something passes, and based on what I'm proposing here is the two options, if we look at the 2.8041, over a 4-year period of time, the general fund gets hit, the police fund is drained, and the general fund is hit for another 2.15 million. If we go with the 3.2 millage, which is the one we tried to get through in August to keep everything even from a covering the cost standpoint, not the check you would be writing, it'll be a little bit more, but if we did that, then the fund at the end, the police fund at the end stays at around the 3.6, the general fund does not get hit. Okay?
So basically, everything, all the funding and reserves stay intact.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Okay, trustee Morocco.
Could you let the residents know without the millage what we pay annually for the police? Because I don't think we
Yeah.
keep talking about the difference.
Yep.
If there's no millage, it's like $7 million a year that we're paying out of the general fund. It's not,
So it's a little bit higher than that.
Okay, but
Okay,
just
so
if you would.
it's roughly about 8 million a year. Okay, now, just so we're clear, is that anything that's called a special event, and that would be things like Pine Knob, or even like the Taste of Clarkston, some of these other events that some of the Rotary sometimes does it, sometimes the Clarkston High School football games, they want people there. All those are on top of it. But those are a direct pass-through. So whatever the county bills us for those gets directly passed on to the entity that requested that. So that's not part of the general patrol service. Okay? So you'll see a number that's probably a little bit closer to the 9 million, but I mean, from an expenditure standpoint, but again, a lot of that is passed through because the Pine Knob's roughly about 800,000 a year, give or take, depends on the overtime and all that kind of stuff. So that's a little bit different. So, you got to figure that if we were going to continue operating the police as we do, and going forward, you got to figure roughly we need about 8 million a year, increasing 10% every year going forward to cover the cost over the next 4. So that 8 gets to 10 real quick. And that would come out of the general fund. That's why the general fund can't support it. So, we take the 17, we take out the reserve, which we are required by the township special rules to maintain a certain reserve in the general fund for emergencies. And emergencies can be anything, that can go on that suddenly requires some additional funds. We back that out, we're down to somewhere around almost 14 million. Well, at 8 to 10 million over the next 4 years, it's not real hard math to figure out that fund's completely drained, and the Parks and Recs, which are the biggest, and I'm gonna use them because they're the biggest ones that use the general fund for support, because there isn't a millage for the parks in that. And we have great parks, but it takes a lot to keep them up. Okay, that's a long-winded answer for your question, but hopefully it was answered.
it is, and then one other point I just wanted you to make clear, because this is a question people keep asking me, and I learned it not that long ago, about that there is no money in the taxes for the police without a millage.
Correct.
At all, or for police, so without it, which my ignorance, I thought that the taxes covered essential services, and then you went for millages for like the benefits and the bonuses and the extra stuff, but it's not set up that way. We pay for the Parks and Rec out of general fund, but there is no funding for police and fire without a millage, period. It would just bankrupt the township the way that it's been established.
Yes.
Is that because the millages have been separated out of the general operating fund over time to make them separate millages rather than it
For
being rolled
decades,
into?
for decades and decades.
So I just want to
Is
make
it
sure that
decades and decades? Are we 10 years, 15 years?
a long time, way longer than
100 years?
20, 25 years. But I do want to make a point that, for clarification purposes, general fund money can be used to fund the police. It can be used for that. But that was never the intent based on how the budgets and everything else have been around since the police millage it started being done here. And I can share with you that I don't know when the first one was done, but I did look to see when the last time a police millage did not pass, and it was 1997. Ever since then, they have passed. So, I mean, the police millages have been around for,
So it's been separate in
30
the
years.
township for a long time?
Yes.
Because I know some surrounding areas have just recently split them out.
yeah.
But
So
I
it's
didn't-
been separate here for a very long time.
Okay.
Okay. All right, I'm going to move on to the next slide. So I think that, this is probably the side that I think probably should resonate the most with residents. Because the question is that understanding first and foremost that this millage is not on top of an existing millage, it is to replace a millage that expired. And so what you have up there, if your home is worth roughly $200,000, if you're gonna go sell it and it's worth about $200,000, which is a little low for our median house. The median house in Independence Township is about $417,000 or $15,000. Okay, the way the taxes kind of work, and for the taxable value versus the market value, is usually about 50%. If you've lived in your house for a long time, it's not 50%, it's lower than that. So this is kind of a scenario where you just bought the house, your house, you paid $200,000, your house would be taxed at roughly $100,000, which means based on the millage from last year, the 2.828, you would have paid $282.80 for the year. Okay, that's 1,000 times the mills. Okay, which we're looking at, if you look at the 3.2, you're looking at $320 a year, or a yearly difference of $37. If you live in a $500,000, basically market value house, you're paying the taxable assessed value at $250. It's about $93 more than what you paid last year if we go with the 3.2 to cover the costs going forward. Okay, for all intents purposes, and I know it says 2.82, but with the Headley rollback and talking about the 2.8041, dollar-wise, it's the same as if it was the 2.828, okay? So that's about the check-wise, which really kind of breaks down, if you're looking at the $200,000, you're looking at $3 a month, it's about $7.75. So somewhere in between there is gonna be what most people are gonna be paying. If you take the median house value, you'll be paying closer to that $7 more a month. And that's what it translates when we go through from going from the 2.82 to the 3.2 that we put in for August to cover the cost. So I know that I have not, so somebody, I've always said I'm not a Facebook guy. However, in the last month, I've been doing a lot more Facebook posting and reading and looking at stuff and everything else. One of the things that in there that seemed to be very confusing was what exactly is it going to cost me and how to figure that out, right? And so that's why I kind of put this slide together to show that if we go with the 2.8041, you're looking at somewhere near the neighborhood of about $3 a month more. All right, and then if you look at the 7.7, I'm sorry, it wouldn't be $3 more. That if we went to the 3.2, it would be $3 more on a $200,000 house. Otherwise, it would be the same that you were paying before, okay?
Doing the same thing with the address like we
Yeah,
normally do?
yeah.
Okay, Brian Posby, 6108 Lake Walden Drive. So I'm curious, what would be the mechanism for communication to the voters that they understand with the general fund that our capital improvement projects, I'm assuming would be in jeopardy? Am I assuming that
Yeah,
correctly?
it'd be off the table.
Okay, so is there a way to do like a direct mailer? Because some people don't do Facebook, some people don't tune into the meetings. I mean, how can we get with clarity, the message out that because some people say, oh, the township's cash rich, we're sitting on this big war chest of money. But if we start drawing from that war chest, aren't our CIP in jeopardy then?
Yeah, without a doubt, that is an absolute true statement. And as we explained, or I tried to explain earlier, is that if we don't vote in a millage, we don't vote in a police millage, come November, the general fund will be completely depleted and there won't be any CIP projects. We wouldn't be able to afford them. Which also means that by not doing it, we're literally kicking the can down the road because, on two fronts. One is that I think there's some core responsibilities of government, and I think public safety, whether we're talking about police or fire, is one of those things that need to be covered. So that means we would have to go to the general fund and bring it down, but we would be just kicking the can down the road a year or 2 years down the road. We would be right back here again, but now we're going to be even in a worse situation, We've gone through, we would have not been able to cover a lot of the operating costs and some of the things that we use the general fund for, to cover. And so we would be in a lot of trouble there. If we go through and take a look at going even with the 2.8, the renewal, that's better, but in 4 years, we're gonna be right back here where we are. And we're gonna be and have some issues on those fronts again. So those are things that, the 3.2 is the one that keeps us consistent. But yes, I mean, as it stands right now, and I don't wanna speak for the board in its entirety, but I think that the general perception would be that a lot of those CIP projects that we were talking about would definitely be put on hold, probably at a minimum, and some of them would have to be completely rethought, because we need to cover what we are existing right now.
Supervisor, is there a way that this can be clearly communicated to the voters, though, where they would get information either mailed to them, something to think about, to consider? Because again, Facebook is not that means.
No.
The Clarkston News did a great job talking about CIP, but I don't know if enough voters would read, say, understand the alternative, that if we don't, if this doesn't happen, this is,
Well, can I say
Yeah,
something?
if you want.
My biggest concern is that after 2 years, and we decide, well, you guys are sitting on this money, and we don't pass a millage, and then in 2 years, the money is gone, then what do? We have to try to go back to you for another millage, and then if you deny it, then we don't have any money to pay for police, so we don't have any police. And I'm not saying that to scare you or anything like that, but it's a reality. So now in 2 years, we've burned through all the money that we've had, so not only will there be no CIP, or there'll be nothing, no parks, and then on top of that, a potential of not having police in the township. I mean, they'd still respond to 911 calls, but we wouldn't have local patrols or anything like that, so.
Even that gets questionable, but to answer your question maybe more succinctly, Brian, is that right now, there's options. And I know that one of the things that we talked about as a board is how do we do a better job on the messaging, right? I know that some of the board members have their coffee and me on Saturdays. I held 2 workshops on it, very poorly attended. Facebook, right? So you're right in the sense of the fact that Facebook is not the end all. It's not going to get everything done. The paper is another thing. One of the things that we're going to see on tomorrow's agenda, it's been out there, so hopefully you looked at board packet for tomorrow. One of the things that Clerk Newbeck is bringing forward is to do more of a town hall meeting, which is what this is kind of turning into, having those on a more consistent basis once a month, so on and so forth, to be able to utilize that time to also be able to get the message out. But again, I mean, if we look around here, it's not a surprise. It's the same people that pretty much come every board meeting, right? Every now and then you might get 10, 15% different people, but getting that message out is extremely challenging to do. And we all were talking that it's going to take a full board push to be able to go through and say, okay, we can use the coffee and me time, we can use the town hall time, we can use the Clarkston News. We haven't done the Township Times in a while. We can start doing that and getting it back out there again. We can start looking at doing some mailers and all that. But it's going to take a lot of effort and heavy lifting on our part to be able to come up with something to be able to do that effectively, even to the point where we may need to have somebody else come in who's smarter than us, no offense to anybody on the board, to be able to tell us also how can we get out there and reach that message out there a little bit more effectively.
But all due respect, I don't think people love police. I mean, unfortunately, you guys.
Okay, wait, if we're gonna do something, if we're gonna talk, you gotta come up.
Well, he didn't.
I know, I made a mistake.
I'm a rule breaker.
But we like the.
I gotta follow the rules, you don't, that's cool. But all due respect is that I think people are to the point of they're tired of taxes and constant tax increases. I think everyone, for the most part, probably supports the police and fire. I know I do. But when I look at a 0.4 mil increase, yeah, it's $100 a year or more, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then there was another school resource officer millage, adds another, what was it, like 0.3, 0.4, something like that. Then we
Yeah,
have
it's
the school,
30 cents, yeah.
coming at 1.5 mils, right?
County,
And now,
just so we're
from the
clear.
county, I get it, and then there's forecasted now, or what I've heard, I believe, more ballot proposals in November for things in Wayne County hitting Oakland County voters. So when you start adding all that up, it's not a 0.4 mil increase. It becomes very quickly on the August ballot was over 2 point mils in tax increase, right? Between the schools, the resource officer and this. More coming, how many more mills are there gonna be? Because that now becomes not $100, that becomes $400, right?
Yeah.
And we don't even know what the increase is going to be based on inflation. So now are we looking at $500 a year, increase in taxes or more? So that's where the fatigue is. It's not messaging.
For sure.
It's,
Well, it's part of
you're
it
taxing
too,
the
right?
hell out of us, and on, I bought my house for one value, you say it's worth this. Well, I haven't realized any gains in that value, but you're taxing me like I realized it, so I think voters are saying, it's not that we don't want the police and fire funded, I think we do. I think we're saying, when's enough? And all the other ancillary stuff, the zoo, the DIA, the school, it's just piling on to where, again, $93 becomes $500-600, and yeah, it's great if it's only $100. Yeah, I'll vote, but we're not looking at $100. We're looking at $100 on this line item.
I hear you. Treasurer Brown.
So, just real quick, so.
No, wait, hang on a second.
I just want to figure out, are we doing public now, or are we coming back? I'm a little out of sync.
I mean, you guys said we could answer questions, now I feel like
I
it's
understand.
kind of hard to put that
It's
genie
just-
back
it's
in the
fi-
bottle.
I know, but I was gonna answer something prior, and I couldn't get your attention.
I'm sorry,
Oh.
well,
All right, so I just want to make sure that folks understand that we have to be very careful as a board. We cannot be perceived as marketing in favor of a millage. We can't use township resources to do that. So it's critical that when we're talking about it, we're sharing all the information and educating about exactly how the money's being spent. And we're required to do it that way. It's not because that's how we may or may not feel. But I just wanted to make sure we got that, because people are talking about how do we get the message out. For the board, the message is simply the facts of the costs and what kind of money we have to pay for the service. So I just want to make sure everyone understood that.
Right, so
Brian,
let me
before-
add
Brian.
on to that. I think it's,
excuse me, Brian, can you hang on 1 second, please? I know you came up already, so that's why I want to maybe take this opportunity. Do we want to continue this format, board? Yes or no?
Can we finish your presentation first and then maybe field questions?
Is
That'd be okay?
There's gonna be lots of time to talk.
All right. So, I mean, what doesn't change is that we still need to go through, we still need to find a way to fund the police protection. The 2-year renewal, if we're gonna go down that road, which is the one that kind of starts bringing things a little bit more in alignment with the police contracts and so forth. Again, I just want to make sure that this is not a permanent solution, it's a temporary one to take a listen to what the residents did from a vote standpoint and try to figure out how to kind of meet in the middle a little bit on that. The school, and one of the things that was brought up was the school resources officer. One of the things we still need to figure out is how to deal with that one going forward. If we look at the 2.8, the near-term viable, it is viable for the near term, the 2 years, right? We already talked after 2 years, then the funds start to get depleted. The pressure point really falls into 2029, so 27, 28. We can make it through 29 when everything starts to have a cascading financial cost to lots of the programs that are going on in here in the township. If we go through the 3.2, again, just covering the costs as they've been projected to go forward, then we have a clear runway to kind of maintain everything stable the way it is. So again, option A would be to share the inside with the 2.0 on the SROs. So one of the things we have to do figure out from an SRO standpoint is how do we deal with that? We've dealt with it as 2 separate millages. For the August, the question is, do we keep doing that? And so that's one of the things also the board's gonna have to decide. I'm gonna rush through it a little bit because I think the questions are probably a little bit more germane than necessarily the PowerPoint presentation. I do want to spend a minute on this one though. There was a lot of confusion I read, not only in Independence Township, but in neighboring townships about the CIA DDA language at the bottom of the millage. Okay, so what I want to make sure that we're 100% clear is that if you do not live in the DDA, which is kind of the Dixie Highway, there is one sub, if I'm not mistaken, that's kind of gets wrapped into it a little bit over there by White Lake.
Parks of Stonewood.
Parks of Stonewood. They are, and then on Sashabaw here, which we have almost no residentials here on Sashba, you would not be paying into, your money is not necessarily going towards the DDA CIA. A percentage has to come out. Statutorily, anytime you go through and create a DDA, Downtown Development Authority, the state of Michigan says a certain amount of that money has to go to it. It's not one that we choose to say yes or no, it's statutorily required. Same thing with Orion, same thing with Oxford, anyone that has it has to do it, okay? The second thing is on the CIA, that came about, I think in 2006, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in that neighborhood. It was contractually written into the creation of it, which the county blessed and everything else. It has to go through that process. That a certain portion of any tip, any type of excess revenue type thing we're talking about here, would then go into, millage would go into the CIA. And that's true across the board. Okay, this is not a boondoggle, so to speak, to grab some extra funds. It's always been there. The reason why, for example, the DDA you may not have seen is because of the fact that the DDA just got revised. And there hasn't been a millage, I don't believe, correct me the board if I'm wrong, there hasn't been a millage since the DDA was revised. But that language is universal across all millages for all municipalities in Michigan.
Chuck,
Yeah.
just,
Treasurer Brown?
just real quick, so the CIA, anybody who's been here since the early 2000s, Sashba used to be 2 lanes. It got turned into a boulevard, street lights, safety paths. So all that infrastructure work, the township borrowed millions of dollars to pay for that work. Now, we don't think all the residents should have to pay for that. Just the properties whose values went up because of the improvements. So it'll be all the commercial businesses in that area. And so as their taxable values grow beyond what they were when we started, there's a capture of part of that for the CIA that's used directly to pay back on the bonds we took out. So almost 95% of that money is just paying back the debts from a long time ago. And it'll be over in, does anybody know when that's gonna be?
2030.
It's
Unless
gonna
it
be
gets
paid off in about
extended.
4 years, and it just goes away.
The
So-
CIA covers Sashaba.
The CIA is Sashaba. The DDA is really gonna somewhat function the same way. They're just getting started and coming up with what are the plans to improve the infrastructure around Dixie Highway, improve walkability, and that sort of thing. We'll need money to do that, and we would bond for it, and the bond would be paid back by the money being captured from just the properties that benefited from it along Dixie. So that's sort of a way to let people kind of understand how that works. Sam's on the DDA.
I'm on the DDA, so I'm gonna chime in. What we're talking about is tax increment financing. So the DDA was established in 2023. So in layman's terms, if I get this wrong, let me know. But if your property in the DDA, which is Dixie Highway from Andersonville Road to the Deer Lake Inn on Dixie, up M15 to the village line of Clarkston, and White Lake Road to Andersonville, that's the DDA. All the parcels that are on that property, whatever their taxes were in 2023, okay, that have gone up since 2023, the DDA gets to capture that difference between 2023, say it was worth, your taxes were $5,000 in 2023, and in 2024 they were $5,500, okay, so that 500 gets captured by the DDA, not the 5,000, the 500, and that gets reinvested into the corridor, trying to reinvest the corridor or put in a boulevard. So we're not, all of the, at no point does the millage money go to the DDA. The incremental amount from when the DDA was started, which is in 2023, to what your taxes are now, that difference is what gets captured by the DDA. So it's a misconception that people think that your taxes or your millage, police millage money is being diverted to the DDA. It's like 1% or a very small amount of the millage. It's just that incremental increase that we capture by only the people in the district. And then we were able to use that money to make safety improvements, crosswalks, boulevards, and things like that. So it's important to understand that it's not, those people are not getting the DDA police money. It's a very small percentage, but by law we're mandated to say that they get to capture that little incremental bit.
So, and by the way, that's exactly right. By the way, for the DDA, the 4-year average that would be taken out of that police money
is $115,000 a year out of $8 million. It's very small on the DDA, because again, it has an increase in value, and it's gonna take some time to do that, so.
Yeah, and to give you some numbers very similar to that, in '25, there was 76,000, I think, out of the police millage that raised roughly about 8 million went to the CIA. The DDA was even smaller. It was somewhere in the neighborhood of like $67,000 or something like that. So when we talk about it, I think it's really important to understand that this is not a boondoggle to try to raise more money. It's not like a pork belly thing where, you hear in Congress all the time, Representative Joe Smith suddenly added a new bridge for his thing for healthcare, right? Completely unrelated. It's not that type of thing. We're just contractually obligated by the way the state allows us to do that. And just as a little side note, you want DDAs and CIAs. Okay, you definitely want them, because what it does do is it keeps a lot of the taxes. So like somebody brought up the zoo or something like that. Well, in the CIA and the DDA both, we get to keep some of that money that would have been paid to the zoo. We get to keep part of that here locally. So those DDAs and CIAs help out the community a lot by having them there. And the idea there is that the people that, when I say people, I mean the people directly physically in those corridors that are benefiting from these big improvements, their property values going up and everything else, they're the ones that we're asking to pay the lion's share of the taxes to help improve those, because they are benefiting from it. Okay.
I think it's about 50% almost of outside money that we capture.
Yes.
So it's not just, the library, it's the mass transit, it's Oakland University, it's the zoo, so it's a huge benefit for us, because we're getting to keep that tiny little increment of all of those taxes that would normally have left the township. So we gain more than we lose.
For sure.
By having the DDA.
Which, by the way, is the other reason why Oakland County's not excited about doing these anymore. Matter of fact, we're going to be going to argue, or I shouldn't argue. We're going to go down and have a conversation with them why we may want to continue the CIA. Because again, these are tax dollars that these other taxing authorities are losing out on us because we're keeping it here local. So we want to be able to keep these things here so we can keep more of the dollars in our own community. This one here, why not just use the general fund? We already talked about that, because in a couple years, 2 years, the end of 28, first part of 29, the fund goes broke, and we would have to make massive cuts through a lot of the other departments that are using currently the general fund to sustain itself.
Chuck,
Sorry.
this is good timing here. I wanted to point something else out we actually haven't talked about yet. If we start utilizing general fund and wipe out our police extra fund and start digging into the general fund, one of the best things we've done, I think, on this board is figure out a way to get some roads paved. We did 3 projects last year. Our credit rating, if this happens and these fund balances go down, our credit rating is going to go down. Standard & Poor's rates us. Most people have heard of Standard & Poor's. They give us a credit rating, and that credit rating determines the percentage we get on the bonds we want to do to pave more roads. And if we pave roads with a bond, that low rate and maybe less than 4%, we pass on to the people who want to pave their roads, which again brings the cost down even more. So there's a huge opportunity for us to do that. This is the real negative. If our fund balances start going down, the interest rates that are going to pay their roads are going to go up. So I'll throw that in.
So part of what you're hearing here tonight on this is that this is not a simple question. And I get the idea of the whole tax fatigue and the 1.5%. And all these other different tax authorities are coming in, and enough's enough. I hear that 100%. But what we want to make sure is that we're not being penny wise and pound foolish. We want to make sure we're not cutting off our nose to spite our face and all those other little cute colloquialisms. We want to make sure that we're being good stewards and doing the right thing and looking down the road to make sure that we don't end up in a very bad position, much like we kind of did and the schools did back in 2009 when everything went into the proverbial financial toilet. Is that mine?
Yeah, I don't know how to turn it off.
Sorry, everybody. So that's, again, part of the things that we're looking at. Draining funds down is just never, you don't drain your own personal bank accounts down, right? You try to figure out, how do I maintain a reserve? Hopefully, we all make the reserves the same way we come up with ours. 6 months of expenses should be sitting in a highly liquid position, so on and so forth. We don't get the opportunity to invest in equities, but, so why 2 years? So part of the things is that I was looking at, and I've had some conversations a little bit with the board, it hasn't fully been decided yet, is maybe what we need to do is line this up with a 2-year instead of the traditional 4-year. That's at least an option to be able to go through and say, okay, if we do that, then it kind of matches up with the contract renewals, so we know exactly what we're gonna need for instead of saying, okay, they told us all it was gonna be 10%, we believe them to an extent, right? But at the same token, if we line it up with the actual contracts, we'll know exactly what it is. So we could come back at that time and go through that part of it. And so that's part of the reason why we're also looking at a little bit shorter. Again, it is a stopgap, it is not a long-term solution. So, sorry, trustee Tuck.
Germane to that last slide, so again, we'll unpack this here in a little bit, so I won't get into it right now, but let's just say we go with the Plan B, okay? Plan A failed. Plan B would be that being cognizant that we dig into the funds, knowing there's still gonna be that liability at the end, because we've already forecasted costs over a number of years. So we burn up a sizable portion of the reserves. What, and we're looking at just under a 0.4 mil increase now. Have we calculated what that's going to look like should we go with this option, and knowing we're gonna still have to reconcile things at some point? What is that proposal going to look like should we try to be passing a millage that would discontinue leaning on the fund and the reserves?
So you mean if we go back to the
So like
3.2?
Yeah, so let's say it's no longer gonna be 3.2, because 2 years have passed, it's gonna now be 3.6. I'm throwing that number out, but has there been a calculation to determine what a forecast perhaps, of what that millage rate will look like in 2028?
So let me just try to restate your question to make sure I have it.
Sure.
So right now, tonight, we're talking about the 2.8041. Let's just call that option A. Option B would be go back what we presented in August, which is the 3.2.
Right.
So if we look at the option A, the 2.8, the renewal number, we would be burning through it, and at that point in time, we would be looking at a millage that would be probably in excess of 3.2. The reason being is, as the board is very familiar with, once you set that millage rate, it's kind of locked for the whole level, for the term of the millage. So with the idea there that we were going to try to keep everything consistent, so in the beginning, I think I shared this when we started talking about the language before, in 27 and 28, if we go with the 3.2, we will be building up a little bit more of a reserve than we're spending. That's because when you get to 29 and 30, we are spending more than what we're bringing in. Okay? So if we are going to go through and look and say if we're going to keep the dollar amount the same, so the option A, then we know we're going to have to go higher than 3.2 to meet those costs going forward. So we are going to have a very big jump in 2 years down the road.
Yeah,
Does that answer your question?
That was the point I was making. I was just wondering if, I know it's gonna be in excess of 3.2, but
Yes.
have we calculated it's gonna be 3.6 or 3.5?
I can say that I have not done that.
Not that we can hold our feet to the fire on that, because we don't know what the future holds necessarily. We can only predict based upon the information we have. So that, but yeah, that was my point is, that's the double-edged sword here, right? But that option A, as you called it, certainly gives residents more time to understand and be informed.
Yeah.
There's that piece. Thanks.
So tonight we have to decide, I guess first and foremost, I didn't put it up here, but because from my perspective as the supervisor and all that is, I'm saying that we need to go out for a millage. Obviously, the unspoken one here, or the unlisted one here, is we don't, and we just drain down the general fund. I think that we're looking at the 2.8 versus the 3.2. what are we gonna do with the SROs? How are we gonna do that? We had it as a separate millage option before, and the question is, do we keep it that way? And then finally is, what are the terms? Are we gonna do 2 years or 4 years? Historically, we've done 4. You know, we talked about maybe doing the 2 for the lower amount to get everything kind of lined up and going from that standpoint, or we can do the 3.2 for the 4 years and keep everything consistent. So that's kind of in a nutshell, and a really, really long 40 minutes of talking here. So, you know, obviously, you know, so that's kind of what we're looking at. Okay? So I will then now come back up to the board and, as one of you two said, we can unpack it all further.
No, it's not.
All right, so I am going to open it up to comments from the audience. Just come back up. Same rules, 5 minutes. I'll let you know when 4 minutes are up. Before we start that, do we answer questions, or we just stick to the normal, since we kind of already had the town hall?
I'm okay with answering them if we have the answer.
Yeah, I believe that
Okay.
if somebody has a question, they certainly should have an
All right.
answer for this one.
So I guess we'll be answering questions this time. It's a special meeting, so we'll have special rules. Come on up, Brian.
So Brian Posby, 6108 Lake Walden Drive. I just want to reemphasize again what I meant by what I first said in messaging. I wouldn't expect the board to go out and start campaigning or take a position, but I think it's important to have informed voters that know what they're voting on. I saw misinformation out there on this primary voting on I won't even bring up where, but I saw some misinformation, and I would hate to see that happen when so many important things are on the line. In fact, Supervisor, you mentioned about meeting attendance. Well, I witnessed the most attended meeting in 2026 had to do with the senior center, the drainage, the parks. You know, I'm one of the folks that moved here because of the park system and that. And so all those CIPs, I saw this place packed with people coming up and talking about it. So I think the voters need to know what's on the line. In my engineering world, we call it cause and effect. You do this, this is what happens. Okay, I think people we want informed voters, not the board going out and taking a position and campaigning. We want the voters to make up their mind, but how do we get clear, concise, factual information in their hands so then they can make the decision when they go to the polls? That's what I think is important. And yes, this room will be packed again when we start talking about CIP. You're going to have voters coming up and saying, I didn't know that we were jeopardizing all that. Well, how do we get that messaging out so people know cause and effect? If I vote this way, this is what's going to happen. I vote the other way, this is what's going to happen. It's not about campaigning or taking a position. It's about getting that information out there. And Supervisor, I think you're right. Maybe it's time to bring somebody in that knows how to effectively and efficiently get that messaging into the hands of the voters. Maybe that makes sense to get somebody to do that. But I think it's paramount to get that information in the voters' hands so they can make informed decisions. That's it.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience? Right. Well,
Go. Okay. You're up. Go. John Ingram, 8615 Hidden Acre Court. Back to the increase from the county, 10% year over year. Seems pretty extreme. Have they provided context around why, or is it just a lick the finger and see which way the wind's blowing and stick it to the townships that are contracting with us? Didn't know if we've gotten anything from them on where this number comes from.
yeah, so Renee, the budget analyst, and myself went down there and we had a conversation with them. And yes, so they did provide numbers. One of the things that they said that part of the reason why there was such a big jump from the traditional 3 to the 9.2% a year is because they said that the county was subsidizing the 12 municipalities that were contracting this sheriff's service. Now, in all likelihood, that's probably true. Okay, so I'm not even gonna get in a big argument with them about that. They probably, the rest of the Oakland County was probably subsidizing us a little bit on it. So they went through and they did what they would call the true up, right? And go through and say, okay, da-da-da, here's all the things. Where it got a little messy or ambiguous was what exactly are you putting in there? And, you know, from there, we found out interesting things like on the healthcare, right? The sheriff's department, and I do want to make sure we point this out too, that the Oakland County Sheriff's Department is kind of like its own little standalone organization that still has to report under the county. They are not the ones setting the rates. They do their own study, bring it to the county and say, okay, here's what we think you should be doing and what you should be charging based on their own analysis. It was after they brought that number that the county commissioners started just randomly jacking up the numbers. One of the things that they wanted to talk about was healthcare, and because we all know healthcare costs are going up, they went through, and when I started asking it, because I own an insurance agency, so I understand how healthcare works. I've been doing it for 25, 30 years. I found out, I started asking questions about it, and turns out that they take the average cost of all health insurance across all employees outside of the sheriff's department. So now the question becomes, well, wait a minute, is the cost for the deputies more or less than the average for the whole county-wide? They didn't have the numbers. They didn't know. They started adding all sorts of everything. And if you talk to Woodward, the chairman, he would say that, look, everything that we incur a cost for, U11 will pay your share of it. And so we started getting in there, but where we ran into problems, and so like in Orion, you know, Chris Barnett was really adamant. So if you were following this at all over the last year, you know Chris has been all over the papers and the news about this, is that they did not want to give us the hard breakdown on some of the formulas. Like the health care insurance, it's just because I kept asking questions in a very specific way that we found out that it was countywide, not the sheriff's department-wide. There are all sorts of little things like that that are, I'm sure, are baked in there that they're not coming to full disclosure on. And I will also say this, after talking to Brian, who is the CFO there, is that I don't think they know exactly. I think they took some very broad strokes and said, I think the average cost of this is this way, and whether is it fair to calculate it that way or not, I don't think they actually, they think they probably did it fairly, but is it really fairly, right? And that's the question. And so when we asked them to start giving us breakdowns of those numbers, I don't think they had them. So, but pushing back has definitely been a big part of what's been going on for the last 6 months or so.
So I appreciate that context,
Okay.
understanding it. They don't really know why they're doing it, they're just doing it.
I can
They
tell
have some
you-
sense,
Yeah.
right, but it sounds like they really just kind of picked.
There's
picked
probably
the number.
20% of the cost that they don't actually have a real hard way of doing
So
it.
what recourse says, not just our township, but the other townships have to say, look, you've provided this service at this rate, we're happy to continue to pay that until you can provide full disclosure as to how you got to, you went from X to Y, how you got to Y, until you can fully disclose that, we're not paying that. We'll pay X, but we're not paying Y, because you can't explain it.
So again, on
I
that,
mean, do we have a recourse? I mean,
not really. I mean, because here's the end of the day, right? They own the deputies department. We are a captured customer. It's not like we can go to some other sheriff's department and contract with them here, right?
Right.
So one of the things that I've been looking at for the last year, and I've been pretty vocal about this, is that if we're paying for everything, including the staples, then at what point does it make sense for us to not use you because we're already paying for everything?
Right.
Okay? So
There's no
that,
cost benefit there.
you're right. So if we look at some of the surrounding communities that are relatively close to our size and contract the same amount of deputies and everything else, it's still on an $8 million spend on our side. You know, you're looking at somewhere probably around 10 million to 11 million for the equivalent if we were going to start our own. Okay? So
Okay.
there's more cost. The difference is the increase annually is the actual cost and not some other formula that we can't quite see the transparency through.
Right.
And we're a little bit more in control of our future investment,
Okay.
right? But, I mean, as it stands right now with the county, yeah, we're captured. I mean, there's not much we can do.
So
So there's not an
really-
alternative.
if this doesn't pass in November, unfortunately, a lot of deputies are getting fired.
Unfortunately, that would be most likely a true scenario.
Or not likely to happen. but
Yeah.
They'd find funding.
Yeah.
And then just the last one is the SRO.
Yes.
How has that been historically been funded?
So, interesting thing from a historical standpoint, and I hope you guys don't mind that I'm answering all
No,
this. I
it's
don't want
fine.
to, if you guys want to jump in, please do. Prior to this contract that came in 25, the SROs were never treated as a separate group. In 25, the contracts came back and said, now, we're gonna bill you for the SROs, and it's gonna be under a different contract than the general police contracts.
That's from the county.
That's from the county. The county decided that's what they wanted to do, in part because the county decided that they were gonna add some other, now this is what I would consider to be pork belly type stuff. They decided to add some other fees on there to cover other projects that are school-related still, but, things that haven't been traditionally covered. They wanted to build up a side fund to be able to have that money available to use for the schools. I'm gonna say the schools because that's what they said, but I don't know what happened to it.
Okay.
So it really is a recent phenomenon that changed and got kind of carved out.
Okay. So is there any plans to, I guess no different than Pine Knob, the school is the user of that service, the school funds that?
So, can I just finish that one question? Then? Okay,
So I was
sorry.
he was looking for the history back.
Yeah, he wants
Oh,
the
okay,
fund.
well, yeah, please, go ahead, Paul.
So prior to, I think around 2010, and the huge collapse in the real estate market, the schools paid 100% of the SROs through our contract. And the board back then, none of us were on it at that time, they came in and said, listen, we're gonna cover this, the schools didn't have the money for it, we'll cover it for now, and then from there, we jumped forward for a little while, and I think they started paying 25%. More recently, they've been paying 50% of that cost, and it's been driven by us looking at where our fund balance goes. At the end of the day, whether the taxes are through the school or through the township, our residents are paying for the SROs the same as they are the sheriff. So the question is, where can we get that from? It certainly is something that has to happen.
No, I hear what you're saying there, but at the same time, we're being asked to pay more in school taxes, right? And now this is in effect another school tax, right, for the SRO. Yeah, it's being passed through the sheriff's office, but it's directly going to
The office
result
of
in
the
more
SROs.
funding for the school, right? Because now the school's not gonna be responsible for paying for that when we're already paying taxes to go for school safety, all the other stuff that we pay in and taxes that make their way to the school, so. But the SRO is a new thing. And the school has been historically paying, but if this passes, then the school's not paying any of the SRO expense? And that's the last question.
We haven't
got to that
talked
yet.
about that.
Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah.
Matthew Coates, 5226 Forest Valley Drive. With the two options that you have, option A, which is the 2.8, the 2.8?
Yeah, just go there, it's
Okay,
easier.
3.2 or no option, are we still maintaining police coverage, or are we losing any?
It would be the intent of the
Maintain.
2.8 to maintain, 2.8 or 3.2, the intent would be to maintain the same level of deputies that we have currently.
Okay, so there's
That if
no,
it goes to zero, with no millage, then we would probably have to readdress that because we would be out of money in 2 years.
right, so that's the option where we would lose coverage or lose the service or the quality of service that we have now.
Most likely, it would probably be something like that. I don't know to what extent the board would have to decide, what services we would cut. It'd either be cut through the police and bringing down the deputies. It could be a cut in, I keep picking up parks, I feel bad about that, but parks, bringing their services down to how much they get or a combination thereof. But yes, there would be some reduction. I would say, feel very confident, there would be some reduction in service.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, before the next speaker, real quick.
Okay, sorry.
On the heels of Mr. Coates' questions, it's probably important for us to establish if the millage is rejected, whether it's 2832 There is a statutory obligation by the county to provide, at the very least, patrolling of county roads. I would think, I don't know what that is, just like, and I'm not advocating for that, full disclosure. I think we want to maintain, police service, should the voters approve that, but, like up in, if it's Rose Township, they don't have police, they rely on state police to come to their, should they press 911, there is a statutory police obligation to respond to emergencies. Again, not a rabbit hole we want to go down, but
I think it's
it
a
wouldn't be,
state
it wouldn't be
police,
absolutely zero. I was just curious if we even knew the answer to that.
Yeah, so statutorily, the county has to provide a jail system. Okay, that one is statutory in there. One of the things that I was gonna bring up is that Roseville, Groveland, and Hadley, I believe, they do not have a millage for police. They do not contract with Oakland County. One of the things that Sheriff Bouchard brought down the supervisors around here, that kind of border up against that, said that they would no longer be providing mutual aid up into those areas. So if you didn't have a contract, you're not getting coverage, except for, obviously, and I don't know if the right term is, if it's a homicide or something like that, then yes, of course, they would respond and pull, because what was happening is that Springfield has a contract with the Oakland County Sheriffs, we do, and so what was happening is that we were funding and backfilling for the Oakland County Sheriffs to go up into those municipalities that did not have a contract with the county. So in essence, our residents are paying for some of their coverage. So, it does restrict down emergencies, yes. But, hey, I gotta pick whatever a non-emergency thing would be by definition, then no, they don't necessarily have to. Or the priority would be on those municipalities that have it. And so a response time of 7 minutes now may turn into 35 minutes. And if it's the police, and that's actually a big problem, so to speak, up there, is that the response time is slower up there, even with the state police, than it is for us here in Independence, utilizing the Oakland County Sheriffs. Sorry, Ray. You're working your way forward. You got 5 chairs up, now you're at the mic.
Okay, Ray Llewellyn, 9254 Pine Knob Road. So I see a few different things about this whole picture. One is, Chuck, you were on Facebook a lot, and you did it, like, I'm the supervisor, come and meet the sheriff's department, and I think the fire.
Yeah.
But anyway, those were out there. I'm not beating up on anybody tonight, because I left my gloves at home. But when this meeting happened tonight, or was planned for tonight, I know that many people, you can all put a little mask on and troll Facebook, but Sam is the one that put it out there saying, hey folks, there's a meeting tonight. Many people here, I don't, go to the township's website every day and check, oh, is there a meeting gonna be tonight? No, I look at it like, oh, okay, there was one last Tuesday, so there's now not one this Tuesday, and then the next Tuesday. So many people didn't know about the meeting tonight. And I can tell you from the responses that people were saying was, oh, so this is another one of their games, meaning the township board, that we're not gonna tell you about this meeting. In fact, people even commented, said, oh, so I need to start going over to the township hall daily to check the board to see what's posted. I'm just saying, people, residents, to promote this stuff, I think we have all kinds of media ways to get this word out. If somebody contacted Channel 4, Channel 7, and said, come to a board meeting, and, and you were talking, Chuck, or even all of the board, one by one, and was explaining about it, they would broadcast that stuff. They did it with Barnett. You went, here was a link. You could sit there and watch it. So I'm just saying, personally, I do not think that it's something that, oh, we're gonna hire, John Brown's, promotion company or something. No, that's my feelings. I don't think it's a mailer thing, because people get these mailers when all of you have ran for election. We all get a stack of mailers, and we go, oh, here's another one, here's another one. People are gonna look at it and go, bip. I mean, that's what I think they're gonna do. I'm not gonna speak for everybody, I'm just speaking for myself, but I think that's gonna be some of the sentiment. Plus, we all saw by Wednesday morning, when Carrie had everything tabulated, this is the percentage that was for it, this is the percentage that was against it. So now if you send them a mailer, the people that were against it are gonna go, okay, I'm calling 4 more people and tell them, you know, vote no again in November. So I just think it's kind of like, here's a line and you really gotta walk it tight. That's what I think. But I think the town hall's idea is a great thing, because when the 3, Chuck, or not Chuck, but Sam and Jim and David had the town hall, and we could talk to them, and they could answer us. I think that was, the communication opened up. And back like Paul mentioned about the DDA and the CIA, that was another big thing, is that people didn't understand that, okay, if I own a house on Pine Knob Road, I'm not paying into the CIA, I'm not paying into the DDA. But people believe, hey, I'm paying into this. You know, here's a little dab over here and a dab over there to that pot. So I think it's a big part is the communication, and for the residents to look at this board and say, okay, I believe what you're telling me. So thank you guys very much. But I just think it's the communication it got to that line, but it didn't come over to here.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I have a question. Jacqueline Sivers. I can't put my address on the record because of my job. Quick question. Are the options that we're considering or you're considering tonight regarding an SRO, the options are either included with the police protection fund as an all-in-one encompass and have them vote on that, and then the other option is renew both as written? Are those the 2 options that we're discussing?
So the ones that I brought forward, the
Yeah.
board can obviously bring their own forward, and that option is that we would have the, one option would be to have if we were going with the lower 2.8 number, that would not include the SROs. The 3.2 would not, but so it's an option of, are we rolling them in, or are we keeping them separate? That's really what it is. It's not a matter of which one of the things, it's just, is it its own standalone, or is it inclusive? So that's kind of the option.
And if it's a standalone that the board decides, then that standalone fund would also incorporate SRO funding.
The standalone
The
one
funds would be able to be used for SRO funding.
It would be basically designated exclusively for the SROs.
No, I'm talking about the police protection millage. If it was renewed on the November ballot, and you decide as the board not to separate out the SRO as a separate millage request, when that was done in August, if the police protection fund passed and the SRO one didn't, it's my understanding that the funds under the police protection fund would not have been able to be used just by ballot language for school resource officers. It would have been earmarked for the general fund for the police. Does that stand true in these options? So if you decide to renew the police protection fund as written in the November, and you don't separate out an SRO as an additional millage request, are those funds now going to be able to be used for SROs?
I think what has to be decided is, are we gonna make it a separate or not? And then the board would decide whether to include it or not include it. So I don't think we're there yet on that part of it. I mean, clearly, if it's a separate one and the board elects to make the SROs their own separate millage, then it would not be included, right? So the question first and foremost, are we gonna keep it separate? Then once that gets answered, if it turns out that no, then the question is, are we gonna go and include the SROs or not include the SROs? And I think that's a conversation you have for the board to have on that.
Okay. Is that tonight's conversation?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else, or?
No.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Well, just a real quick question, if we have our attorney here. So if we don't have a separate SRO millage and we just go, say, with the 3.2, providing police continue to partner with the schools to have SRO offers at the schools, that would still fit under the millage without actually saying SROs because they're still sheriff officers, wouldn't it?
So that's something I would most likely want to look into, specifically to look at what the language is before I would commit to any answer on that. My understanding is that the language that is presented right now that Mr. Kelly put together is very specific to the requests that have been discussed and that are going to be discussed by the board. I don't have a clear answer for you on that. That's something I have to go back and discuss with Mr. Kelly. He's putting this together, so.
That's
so
fine.
I don't have a
Again,
good answer for you, unfortunately.
we can make that happen just by changing language. If the board said, let's just have one, and let's continue to partner with the schools, the language could very easily that's a pretty easy tweak.
I don't know that that's a tweak, that is an easy tweak. That's why I would want to look at
time
with Mr. Kelly to look at that language exactly to make sure it falls within the law.
Trustee Morocco.
The kind of handshake agreement we've had with the schools over this to help them out, is that money, was it ever coming out of the police millage, or was it general fund money that we were helping them out with?
Police.
It was coming out of the police.
It was coming out
Yes.
of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the reason why Trustee Morocco says handshake is because we do not have a contract with the school. We sent one over, and then it just never got signed, so we've been operating on a handshake right now.
And that's
Seems to be
what I would
working.
have to look
but,
at with
yeah.
Mr. Kelly, because I'm not sure what the status of that is.
Yeah. Do we, yeah, I guess yes, please come back up.
Okay, I just have another quick comment about this SRO. So, one question is, how many officers do they have at the school now?
4,
3 that the township is paying for.
3. Springfield, please.
Springfield
Okay,
pays for 1.
so what if, say that this was, the November election was today, and the voters, the residents passed the police millage for Independence Township, but they did not pass the SRO, then would it not be the responsibility of the school that, okay, we're covered with 3, but we really want 4, wouldn't it be for the school to come up with the money themselves?
I think it comes down to the ballot language, and so if we keep 2 separate ones, well, let's work from the premise that the intent is the general police fund, 1, would only cover the general township police service. If we had the SRO one over there and it failed, it would then be up to the school to figure out how to get the resources to be able to cover for the 3 that are currently there now that we're participating with from a township standpoint.
Okay, and thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, I'll move it to online. Are there any questions online? Oh, I saw a hand go up and then down. Oh, there we go. And I can't read that.
Belinda Billings.
So Belinda, please. You're muted.
We've got it unmuted, I think.
Belinda, we still can't hear you if you're talking.
She's unmuted.
There we go.
IT guys gotta fix it.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to say, it seems like we find ourselves in a very serious position as a township. I really think most people that went to vote did not understand that that millage was just a renewal rather than, I think they thought it was an additional millage on top of what was already in place. So I don't know if the wording can be better or what, but I think most any resident would vote for health and safety, police and a fire department for their township. So I really think there was a lot of misunderstanding on the part of the voters that went to the polls. it also affects our property values. You know, people coming to Clarkston, if we don't have police and fire department, our values will plummet. It's just not a good place to be in. And as far as the SRO, I really think maybe that should be separated out as a millage, because I have lived in other areas where, believe it or not, they didn't have SRO officers. Not that I'm promoting that, because I vote for every time for the police and fire school resource officers, but I think maybe the voters should have a say in that, whether or not they want part of their millage to go for school resource officers. I want to also say that I support the town hall type of meeting. It's not as formal. It's more of a question and answer type situation, and I think that would be a good format to educate some of the voters before the next vote.
Thank you. Anybody else online have any other questions? Comments? So Avlac?
Mr. AV
Hi, it's
LLC.
Frank Migliori. Hi, it's Frank Migliori. 4570 Woodhull. Hi, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity here of sharing this time together. I have to agree with that. I'm certain the verbiage on that did not become specific enough that it was, a renewal. I think it was more an addition. And from the voices I've heard from folks I've talked to, literally the tax issue, I think, is a sentiment amongst many of the Oakland County residents, not just here in Independence. And I think the unfortunate, I think the unfortunate aspect of all of the different communities are finding is they are also having similar meetings tonight and during the next week. And I work with a lot of the different township boards. I think I've shared to all of you. I also lived in Hadley years ago, and I understand exactly what you're saying about the, up in Lapeer County, Oakland County bridge up there. We need to have a voice amongst the community what this is going to be. And the budget 3-4 years from now is critical, but the budget right now having to facilitate and make certain the additional, if need be, officers and support of this board and support of the community. I think the management here is changed a lot and doing well. I think the overabundance of thought that we're spending money needlessly is not correct. I think people are doing a very good job of budget and tightening here. When they consider what the price of food and everything else is, I think we have a problem with society thinking that, it's all going to stay the same, but it has to go up. So yes, we have to cut corners on our end, but we have to also recognize that SRO officers are critical. I don't know about you, but I have 10 grandkids right now in schools, and after Oakland or Oxford and others that are going on and out in Colorado, I mean, this is wrong, and who knows what's going on with people coming into schools and doing stuff. They need to be there, and they need to have good counsel. That's my opinion, and thank you all for taking the time.
Thank you. Anybody else online? No? Okay. Oh, somebody just snuck in real quick there. Nicole May.
Hi, Nicole May. I'm at 8970 Michigami. Thanks for having this meeting and explaining everything. Just curious to know, how soon do the recordings of these meetings go out? And if it's possible to even provide the links on, say, Facebook, or disseminate them some other way so people can get the recordings and at least, get caught up on this important information.
So I'm going to let the clerk answer that question because that's kind of her wheelhouse.
The agendas are posted and it has a link. It's already out there now where residents can join. And the meeting typically through Independence Television is available in the morning. And it's actually viewable through YouTube now as well for those that may struggle or haven't been able to find the join the meeting link as well.
But I think that's, just to elaborate a little bit on that, the reason why this one happens so fast is because it's a special meeting and because We have to actually send something to the county tomorrow by 4 o'clock. So, this meeting happened very quickly, just like for everybody else in the townships, all the other townships. They all had these special meetings and everything else to try to meet that deadline in order to be able to get something on the ballot. It's a state or the county requirement that it has to be turned in by tomorrow. Normally, you will see the packet by the clerk's department being handed out on the Thursday or latest Friday up before the Tuesday meeting. And that's typically goes out and she pushes it out. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think I even saw this meeting advertised on Facebook by your department.
On the township website.
Yeah, on the
Came
township
out
website.
today,
Yeah, yeah, and this is no indictment on the timing and everything. It's just more so about getting it to people, the information to people who, couldn't miss it, because obviously it's, clarifying a lot of questions.
Yes,
YouTube is the best way.
to watch it, yeah.
Yeah.
YouTube is the best, yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions online? Nope, okay, at that point, I will close public comments and bring it up to the board for discussion. So anyone have questions?
I'll start with a quick comment.
Okay.
There was a lot of talk about how do you get it out to the residents, whatever. I think citizens are their best communicators. There's mixed views when I hear people coming up. Facebook is good, not everybody's on Facebook, but then you turn around and everyone's quoting all the Facebook comments that they hear from about 12 people. Facebook can be very dangerous. Like, people were talking about the miscommunication on this last vote. That's exactly what happened. And they're letting 5 or 10 people that they follow dictate what happens here, and that's not true. If you're concerned and you really want to know, call here. People are here to answer your questions. People just don't bother to pick up the phone. They just try and go on social media because they think it's easier. The website always has the information. People talk about not being answered by emails. I swear, in the last year, I've probably gotten 3 addressed specifically to me. So when they say you're not answering, people aren't asking either. We're happy to help. Just reach out as part of it. We did bring up doing more town halls. I think that's great. But even getting the notice out about the town halls is the same avenues we have to promote this meeting. If we're only going to get about 25 people, that's not going to help. It's everybody going to their own communities and helping get those facts out there. And if you have other avenues that you think we could be using that works in your community, maybe it's us going to some of your little HOA meetings or something to get the facts out there. Just, if you have different avenues you can think of, because sometimes we're just at a loss. It is in the paper, it's here, it's on the website in different areas, and it's still not getting out there. So that was my comment about the communication on all of this, because this vote is going to be really important.
So I guess you're saying is we could use their help.
Correct.
Trustee Morocco.
To the gentleman's point about everyone's kind of burned out on millages and taxes, I think that was what I got from people calling me, is that they thought this wasn't another additional tax, on their house, which is what everybody's not wanting. And I think that we need to fight to keep the money in Independence Township. We're getting milked by the county and everyone else for every one of these millages that they want to push, and it's going to be a matter of where do you want the money to stay? I've learned a lot about it because I was forced to, but like I said earlier, it kind of blew my mind that our regular taxes don't cover the basic services that I think we're required to provide, which is police and fire, and that we have to go out and ask for it. So that's a misconception. People think it's that somehow in their taxes they're paying for the police. Well, they're not, unless they get a millage, which seems absurd, but that's the way that townships operate. I watched Chris's video he put out. He explained it just like you did, and people are learning a lot. I've made the comment before, there's going to be 6 or 8 millages. Some of our concerns are if we go with a 2-year millage, we're going to be on the same ballot with the fire millage when it expired that the supervisor brought up. So now we would be competing with 2 millages in 2 years for us. Now, hopefully by then, we've done a very good job of educating people to say, your taxes don't pay for the fire or the police unless you have a millage, and it's not an additional tax. It's the same. You know, I think the message got lost that if you approve our millage, your taxes don't go up. If it's just a renewal. If it goes up, it's $100, you know? Well, that's a lot more palatable than 3 mills that I think you're adding to what I'm already paying. And I think that a lot of people just had no idea what we were even asking. I think it's the township's fault partially, and every other township's fault that the kind of process seemed to be is that they always pass statistically. Throw it out there and see if it'll pass before you got to put a lot of effort into getting it passed, you know? And everyone did that, and it blew up in everybody's faces. You know, the second half of it is that we're going to need to fight for the millages that keep the money here. We did a huge mass transit that will never see a penny for those millions of dollars that were given the county. The zoo, the Oakland University, none of that stuff benefits half of our residents. And it just keeps coming. Now there's the school one, then there's gonna be another one, and we need to really get the message out that these 2 millages are what provide our health and safety. They're the funding mechanism, and if you don't wanna spend extra money, then you need to pimp all this other out-of-town money that's being asked for us. I think that mixing them together is a little bit of a problem. I think that from the research I've done and that's been shared with me, Dave did quite a bit on what we are allowed to do, that we can have a favorable opinion toward. We can't spend township money, we can't, but I can be in favor of providing services for the residents. You know, it's not cloak and dagger stuff, but we can't spend taxpayers' money to promote it. But individually, as people, we have the ability to support it, you know? That was a big thing. I'm gonna just get my comments out. I don't have a problem with doing 2 years as long as that's gonna give us the time to really educate the residents on how their safety is funded. And once that message gets out, that I think that will people will understand. I'm kind of in favor of, because we are a little bit fat with money, that we could maybe absorb it and just do a renewal right now for 2 years and eat the cost a little bit. We've got a little bit of money. It wouldn't affect necessarily the CIPs if we got the millage passed as a straight line proposal. I don't like the idea that we're paying for SROs. I've had conversations with Sean Ryan about it. I think it needs to be paid, but I do have an issue with the township residents paying school taxes and then paying township taxes, and then the township taxes going back to the school resources. We do cover all the police services, the surrounding areas, the response team, anything that would happen that's outside of the school, or any support the SROs would have. So I do believe that the school has a minimum responsibility of covering the officers that are inside their facility, and we cover all the officers that support them that are outside the facility. So I kind of look at it in that respect. It's not we're screwing the school out of SRO officers. It's just a matter of fairness, because our taxpayers are paying the school taxes too. So they're also, and in that, it should cover what's in their buildings, and we're gonna cover everything else, so that's kind of how I look at it. And I think that we could phase that out over a period of a couple years to give the school ample time to get their ducks in a row, go for another millage, fund their stuff, so that there isn't any risk of losing the SRO officers. But I wouldn't be in favor of just cutting off services to them without giving them a couple years. We have been slowly weaning ourselves off of that, our taxpayers off of that cost of the in-house protection on that. So that's kind of my immediate feelings on that. I don't like the idea of putting an SRO out there on a millage and then the township having its own millage for police. I think that's confusing. The SRO then would be an actual tax that was added. With the 14,000 residents, I would not want them to be putting all their eggs in the SRO basket, not understanding that they need to support our basket, because our basket is what gives the support to the SROs when something goes wrong. You can't just leave an SRO officer hanging. We gotta bring in the troops, and we gotta cover the cost of the support for the SROs. So, I think that I would be in favor, just my opinion out there is not to increase it, if possibly, go for a 2-year, until I hear everyone else's comments, and then, and just absorb the cost of the SROs for the next 2 years, with the understanding that the school needs to figure out a way over the next 2 years to absorb the in-house protection, and we would continue to provide all the support and outside protection off school property. So I'm just gonna leave that there to set the stage.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Trustee Hayward?
My concern with that is that we have a fire millage coming up in 2 years as well, and we're talking 2 points, it's like interest rates, right? So what's the millage gonna look like in 2 years that we're gonna request? It's probably gonna be larger than 3.2. And then are we going to have to increase our fire millage as it expires? Are we going to have to look at something bigger than that? I live in this township too, so it's not like we're sitting up here putting something on the residents that we're not getting, we're responsible for too. I have to pay my taxes, just like everybody else, and I don't want to live in a township that doesn't have its own, doesn't have a police presence. We already do a lot with little compared to other townships and basically any municipality that either has their own police department or contracts out. And I think that we do a very good job. I think that I would be more in favor of proper messaging and understanding a lot of the things that we did talk about tonight, which is understanding that the 3.2 mils is a new tax or a new millage. It's not on top of what we have. And explaining that, for the most part, like you explained, pretty much for my house, it would cost me an extra $75 a year, which I'd be more than happy to pay for. And that's just to maintain what we have. That's what I'm looking at, to kind of get us locked in and not have to deal with it again. I think that when it's explained that way, it's a lot more understanding to a homeowner that says, oh, so how does this really affect me? It affects you for, if your house is worth about $400,000, you're talking about $75 more a year from what you were already paying. And, but I'm in agreement with, I'd like to see the SRO officer separate. I know the contracts are separate. I think that the people should decide again whether they want to fund that separately. Again, I look at, Paul did a great job putting together here where our money goes, and, Clarkson Schools takes 40% of our taxes, and the township gets about 24%. So when we look at that, I think that the SRO officer needs to go out separately and let the people decide whether they want to fund that on top of the regular police force that we have now, so.
Anybody else? Trustee Matthew?
I have a question about that SRO. I'm also in favor of keeping it separate, but since it is just a handshake 50-50, can the language be changed? If we want to phase them out and give them a little time, can we change it to a 75-25 for this next round?
I think we can do just about anything we want.
Okay, I'm just thinking, it's a beginning of a phase, instead of just another status quo for 2 years. Just a thought.
Can I ask a question about that, please?
Sure.
So if we were to do the SRO separately, doesn't that just fully fund them and we're out of it. Right,
Yes.
immediately, because now we've got the millage funding for it, is that correct?
That is correct. So, I mean,
Okay.
to make sure that we're on the same page there, just to be like, the .32 is designed to cover 100% of the SRO costs. If I'm not mistaken, right? I just want to make sure I'm looking at the budget. She crunched the numbers for me. So the,
Without going with a separate SRO?
with the separate SRO, we're looking at a .32 mil on that millage. That's what it was in August. That's what we were looking at as, my was suggesting as option 2. That covers 100% of the costs of the SROs. So the school would not be paying anything, because the millage, the people, would, I'm looking at saying, the residents are saying that, look, right pocket, left pocket, their millage, your millage, bottom line is, we need to spend this much money if we want the SROs there, and if we do, this is what it would cost. We were coming out with the police millage, and so it was the original, I believe, and I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth here, that the intent was to say, okay, I heard things about transparency and all that, let them see exactly what that cost is for the school, let them decide if they want to cover it through our township millage. And the intent was there, if we're gonna go out and do it, again, I look at it from a resident standpoint, I don't really care, you know, what you do with my check once it gets there. I don't care if you have to take it from the school, or the township to give to the school, or it goes straight to the school, or whatever. I just know what I have to pay. And so, you know, that's kind of how, that was my philosophy and thoughts on it. But it, just so we're clear, it does cover 100% of the SRO cost, which is about $785,000 a year, going up at the same 10% increments. Trustee Hayward.
I have a question for the attorney, actually. So when the language is written and say the SRO fails, and I know it was brought up, if the SRO fails, are we, though, depending on how the original piece, or the main millage, we'll say, is passed, say it passes, would we be allowed to use that money to fund the SROs at that point? And maybe that's a question you didn't have the answer to, because I know and I understand, and I've heard, you know, again, the rumble is like somehow that we're asking for all this money because we're gonna use it for something else, and we can't, which we know legally we can't. Whatever comes into the police fund has to pay for the police, it can't go anywhere else. So there's no boondoggle or anything else, but, so, and that's why I asked the question, because we're strict on where we can spend that money. So even though it's a police service, how does that work?
Yeah, that's, I think, a reiteration of the question that was asked earlier, that I don't have a clear answer for off the top of my head. It's not something specifically that I would know just from my pool of work. It's something that we can get an answer for. Part of that being that there may be these different layered agreements, whether it's a legal issue versus a contract issue, just being able to review all that and have a good answer for you. That's why I don't want to speak and probably provide an answer that's not accurate without looking into it a little bit deeper.
And then, Chuck, I have a question for you regarding,
Yes.
because we don't have the broken out number here. What, I don't have the math. What is the contract cost for the SROs?
It's .2
Right.
mils.
Right.
That generates about $775,000 roughly, which is the 100% of the cost of the SROs. And that 3.2 is going to 765,000 is what it costs, yeah. So
765,000 for the.
that's what the revenue will come in on that.
Okay.
And just like with, when we talked about the general police, there is a little bit of an excess surplus in the first 18, 19 months, 22, 23 months, then it flips where we're not bringing in enough. And so we have to use that little bit of the surplus because we have to maintain that.
We're front loading
0.32.
to pay the back end.
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Treasurer Brown. I'm sorry, Carrie. Oh, I'm sorry, my bad, sorry.
We're same time. I wanted you put out there because there was some talk about proposals that'll be on the November election. I have been notified that Lake Orion schools will have a millage question on the ballot, as well as Waterford schools. And there will be a county millage for an art millage that somebody had spoke about. And with that being said, you know, being in charge of elections, I can't look away from the way the voters voted. The voters spoke in August. We need to be mindful and respect that. The proposal was not overwhelmingly defeated, and that I'm talking about right now is the police millage, the main police millage, but it was defeated. We can't ignore that result, and at the same time, a renewal-only option would be different from what voters were asked to consider in August. Putting a renewal before voters in November would also give a larger number of our residents an opportunity to weigh in. Historically, we see significantly higher turnout in a general election than we do in an August primary. That certainly does not mean we should assume the outcome would be different. But it does mean the question would be considered by a broader group of township voters. If we do move forward, it's important that the proposal clearly reflects what we heard in August and gives voters a straightforward choice about continuing the current level of police funding. I too heard voters who did not understand the proposal, not that it was an additional millage, but they did not understand that the police services would discontinue. And I don't think that the language was clear. It's something that I have stressed to Township Legal, that as we move forward, if we do move forward, that language is clear, that it is to continue police services. So to continue obviously means we would discontinue if we didn't. I think that's really important. We need to be very transparent that a renewal-only option is not a long-term solution, which we've spoken about tonight. Based on projections, it gets us through the immediate period, but eventually we will face a shortfall and have to supplement the police fund with general fund dollars. So to me, that's what we really need to weigh. We need to respect the August vote and be mindful that voters will already have other millage questions before them in November. But we also need to recognize that choosing a short-term renewal does not make the larger funding issue go away. At some point, we will have to address it again, and that will very likely mean another conversation and potentially another request to our voters. So I am for bringing back the renewal option, not the same option that was already before the voters that the voters turned down. We do need to educate, and I am looking more towards the 2-year option so we have a better idea. Yes, that will be on the ballot again with the fire millage. I realize that, but I think it'll give us a better feel and a better notion of what's to come those further years when the county command and the deputies renegotiate their contracts. We're not projecting, we will know what the figures are. So that's where I am. I think that the SRO millage needs to be separate because for the first time we do have a separate contract. And although the voters did defeat that by, I think, if I looked over, I think it was defeated by 29 more voters than the regular millage. But it was defeated as well, and I think there's an education portion for that, and that needs to be done as well from the voter side, as well as a statistical and informational side from the board, and that's where I'm at.
Treasurer Brown. I want to point out a couple of things before I talk about my thoughts on the millage options. We talk about having a lot of extra money. For a long time, after the downturn, the township boards have set a minimum base of reserve. So we want fund balances to stay at 20%, 20% of our annual need. So just talking about the police millage, that would be 2.4 months. Now, I think the township's done a pretty good job. We have 5 months. So the big pool of money we have is only enough to pay for the sheriff's services for 5 months. So even though it's $3.5 million, that's 5 months of service. So as soon as we start cutting into that, we're gonna drop below the 20%. If we deficit spend, like if we go with 2.08 as a straight renewal at an SRO that doesn't pass, and I don't know whether we still help with the SROs or not, when we go just with a straight renewal, when we go negative in our fund balance, so that we've eaten up all the 3.9 and the general fund starts paying to help, fund balances get reported to the state of Michigan, and we have to have a deficit elimination plan. The state's gonna come in, we could be penalized for having a deficit. So for me, I look at it it's kind of scary to think we're gonna ask for a millage that all but ensures we're gonna spend into a deficit the state comes in, our credit ratings drop down, our plans to try and help residents it's not as easy for us to do it. It really worries me that we would spend at that level, because we're really not asking for significantly more than just what the services are costing. I don't think our fund balance should go significantly beyond, maybe we should have a ceiling on it. 20%'s the minimum, it's 2.5 months. Maybe we should say we don't want more than 4, right? And we get to that point, we gotta figure something out, and how to not be in that situation. So for me, you know, I almost feel like if we go 4 years at a 3.2, continue to partner with the schools with some kind of phase out over those 4 years, that we're gonna have SROs, and we'll work with the schools to do that, and just don't have the other millage there. Because if we do the 2.08 and the SRO millage, it's just fractionally less than 3.2 anyways. And so we'd be going back saying, we're not asking for as much, and we're gonna make sure, you know, the SROs are gonna be part of this one, and we're gonna use up some fund balance, but not driving us into a deficit. So as I listened to everybody and seen the numbers and the presentation was good, I just think that is a fiscally responsible thing to do, because the other option is we're gonna violate the state's laws on having negative fund balance. That's it.
Even with the if we go 2.8, we're gonna be in that situation for the 2
Yeah,
years?
the 2.8, yeah, that's, yeah. And the SRO doesn't pass, and we're still trying to help. But even without the SROs, you got that.
I thought we were good for 2 years.
So.
Talking 4.
Yeah, but I'm just, well, at 3.2, we're deficit spending in 2029, we're starting to go downhill. So at 3.2, we end up deficit spending by 700,000, right, below what we take in by 2030. It's going down, but it's not gonna drive us into negative at 3.2. At 2.8, our deficit is 1.5 million in 2030.
Yeah, but we were only gonna do a two-year thing, and then everyone is gonna be educated, and then we're gonna fix it. Go long-term on the next one, was what we were implying, is what I was implying.
Well,
anyway.
I understand, I heard that. I think the SROs is an important issue, and this could solve it with partnering with the schools for 4 years, and only have 1 millage out there where the residents aren't, you know, are seeing 1 millage, and there's an increase, but it's not as big as we asked for in August. That, I'm just saying, that's something, I'm interested in other options
Yeah.
too, but I wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, and the reason I said that, Paul, if you just give me a second, Supervisor, is just that if we went with the 2-year and the SRO separated the way you guys wanna do it, and it fails, we can afford to, in my opinion, subsidize it for those 2 years to make sure that we have the schools lined up for their transition, you know, to hopefully us transition out without, like, it's not that much money that we couldn't cover it for the 2 years. I don't want to commit to covering it for 4 or get us in a bind, but I think
Yeah.
that we could cover it for the 2 if this, you know, to give the
Yeah, but
schools time to
but
react, but that was just, you know.
I understand that, but a little bit of my issue with that is, if I'm asking them and saying, give me this millage for this and this millage for the SROs, and they pass this one and fail this one, and I say, well, I'll just use this for that, I'm doing exactly what they said not to do. So how do I defend that to a taxpayer? I'd rather tell them this is what we're gonna do, and that's it, so I'm done.
And I think that statistically, Carrie said that the SRO got less support than the straight-up police millage.
Terry, go ahead, you had your hand up first.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That's all right. I guess my question with that SRO, why did it turn into 100%? Maybe we keep it separate and cut that in half if we're only supposed to be 50-50 anyway. Where's the school's 50%? How come we're asking for 100 now on our millage?
So Clerk Newbeck's looking at me. Again, because at the end of the day, I'm looking like, if we're gonna go out for a millage, the thought was, if we're gonna go out, does it really matter to the residents if what we do with their check in the background? I just figured this was a clear, more concise understanding that this is what it costs for SROs in the school. As a total sum, that's what it costs.
Okay.
So that was kind of the thought there on, just come out with the full cost of it. If they want to pay for it, great. And hopefully, the schools then on the backside would say, okay, we don't have to go and fund for that because the residents are already funding it. So hopefully, whatever budgets they put together would reflect the fact that they don't have to go out and find that 50%. So they wouldn't be increasing it as much. But I can't speak for exactly what the school board would do. But that was kind of the thoughts.
Pretty sure these are correct or within 0.5%. 50, all three failed, right? 5347 for our primary police protection. I think it was 5644 fail on SRO, and then I think, because I think this is germane, regional enhancement millage failed 62 to 38 in Independence, I believe, right around there. Anecdotally, I heard that that is coming back for November. I don't know if there's any affirmation to that, if that's just all rumor.
I
Is
haven't
that-
received anything yet.
Okay,
But
'cause
the
that
deadline
could,
is
I'm just saying, like, change sentiment when voting for any of these again. So I think, and then you're talking about an arts millage. So I'm not sure what else is out there.
Two school millages. Two school millages, Waterford and Lake Orion.
Okay.
How do those affect us?
Because they're.
Because we have residents who go to Lake Orion schools, and we have residents who go to Waterford schools, and that's in the hundreds.
Right.
But it's in the precinct, it's precinct ballot.
Yeah,
based.
So they're gonna see, Independence Township residents will see increases in school millages being asked for. At the same time, they're looking at our police millage.
Okay,
It's a
I get
small
you.
number, but it's
Right.
maybe 500 people that.
Okay.
Yeah,
I was just wondering.
and so I'm kind of hashing through the scenarios tonight, and, like Clerk Newbeck, I wanna honor the voice of those that showed up on August 4th. That's a big piece of me. It's unfortunate that we didn't take the time or the opportunity to have these conversations in May or June, knowing that this was gonna be perhaps a heavy lift. That ship sailed. The question now is, do we put something similar on the ballot and then educate people between now and November? Is that justifiable? That's the question I'm wrestling with. I don't have any qualms with doing a no increase 2-year deal and kind of paying the piper in 2028. Because there's no question that I think we need to have police funding, right? Whether it's at status quo or there is an increase. I appreciate Treasurer Brown's comments as well. Something I'm chewing on as well. So those are just some of my thoughts.
Trustee Hayward.
My only sticking point of thought is, what is this number gonna look like in 2 years? Can we project that? I don't know. Is it gonna be 4 mills in 2 years? I don't know. So, I mean, that's another thought. So I would like to know what that, I mean, I guess, you know, you need to project that or just guess. But it'd be a lot easier to make a decision whether we do a renewal for 2 years and then have a fire, like I said before, we have a fire millage coming up, and now we've gotta have a police millage for, 4 mills or 4.1 or 4 point, who knows? I don't know.
It would definitely be more. And
Yeah,
it would be a lot more than 3.2. Yeah, I mean, when I say a lot, I mean, you're gonna probably go up to probably 3.4, 3.5 off the top of my head.
Okay.
So it would almost look just about the same with the SRO being carved out. My position is that I'm tired of hearing in Washington all the time where they come up with these stopgaps to fix things. Instead of doing what's right and doing the hard thing and just getting it done and getting it taken care of. I would be more inclined to go for the 3.2 for the 4 years because it keeps us even, it gives us opportunities, gives us time to adjust to things. Whether we include the SROs or not, I'm probably flexible on that, but we do need to get them off the dole. I think the schools should be picking up their own piece on that. I did post out there on Facebook that I did support the SRO, so I did that one and I did both, so I supported both. So I'm not against SROs in the schools, I just think that it probably should ultimately fall back onto the schools. I look at it, I would just as soon do the 3.2, get everything consistent, get it taken care of, and not just push this down the road so we have to go through this whole debate all over again and have other residents upset about why is it jumping up so much now from the 2.8 to a 3.4, a 3 point, whatever it becomes. That's suddenly now becoming a big problem. And then I just think we're starting a pattern of, let's just keep kicking it, where this one we don't have to. And I think we need to do a much better job on the messaging.
Are we not projecting, though, out a couple of years anyways? Because we don't know those figures, correct? You're projecting from what some officers,
I'm projecting from, yeah, to answer your question, yes.
because they haven't gone through contracts, and they're just giving you a guesstimate, right?
Yep.
So that's projecting.
That's what I said, yes, we are
So-
projecting, for sure, we are
One-
projecting. But one has a cushion built into it, the other one doesn't. If they project and all of a sudden they come back at 12, then we're going to a 3.5, 3.6 jump. I'd rather sit there and say, okay, we believe that we've done our best job at getting a number and factoring it in to figure out what we would need to do. It would cost the residents on average somewhere between $75 and $100 to be able to go through and do that for the median house. That seems much more prudent to me than to sit there and say, okay, we're not gonna pay as much now, but we're gonna have a big check due 2 years from now. I think that's gonna be harder for people to swallow, because then we're hoping the economy got better and everything else. You know, things didn't get all that great in the last 5 years. So I'd be concerned about that, where we have an opportunity right now to take a relatively small increase, and everything's relative, so anywhere from, you know, $30, $40 a year to about $100, and take that and then move forward for the 4 years. We've got it locked in, we're good. That's just my opinion.
It's more palatable, $100 at a time, for sure.
Yeah.
Than 2 or 3,
Right.
you know.
I just want to say that I think I do like Paul's idea of the 3.2 mils, the 4 years, not doing the SRO and kind of handling it with the way we've been doing it until we can, possibly the school could, we can work with the schools to figure out exactly what they want to do and how we want to do it. And that kind of builds in that 2-year buffer.
I think we need language
But-
that indicates as part of that millage, that a portion of that millage will support the we need to have it, say the portion may support the SROs. That way we work with the schools towards what we've been at, which has been 50-50 lately, and then that we work towards them. And that gives them a chance to start building that into their budget down the road, given that the residents have kind of turned down the idea of having it directly separate. But we know we'll be able to handle it for the next 4 years.
Yeah. So we're gonna cover it in
We're gonna
one
keep-
millage ask.
And that
Is
we're
what you're
gonna,
saying.
we're gonna continue to partner with the schools to give them time to plan on, because I believe, Mr. Supervisor, the sheriff actually wants to have their contracts for SROs directly with schools going forward, is that?
Well, there's been a lot of conversation around that, so
They're
even
looking at that
Oakland County
anyways, which-
intermediate schools have also talked about having a master contract for all the SROs through there, so there's conversations going
That
on.
may happen.
I don't know if we can say one wants it more than another or not, I
Okay.
don't know that.
Have a question. Do we know if the schools need to have the SRO separated from their millage? So in the future, going forward, say all right, so here's the scenario. We go for a 4-year millage at 3.2. It's gonna cover all the SROs for the next 4 years. We're gonna tell the schools, you know, hey, you got 4 years to get all your ducks in a row. You know what I mean? Would they have to go out for an SRO millage after that, or could they align their school costs and their own millage to cover the SROs into perpetuity? You know what I'm saying? That
They
doesn't-
already pay, they don't need a separate millage for that, they would.
For them, for
No,
their
they pay-
half they're
they-
paying, it's
Yeah,
just
okay,
coming.
fine. Yeah.
Did you want to answer?
Okay, thanks.
Somebody give me the right
I
answer.
apologize. Go ahead.
So, I mean, if you look at it prior to 2010 or 11, when we took it over, they were paying for it, so there is a
Without a
mechanism.
millage, it was
Yeah.
just wrapped into their
I'm not 100%
cost.
sure that the mechanism that they use, but they were covering the cost.
She
So
might
we have
know.
someone that knows.
Schools can't levy millages. We don't, statutorily, a school district cannot levy a millage. The reason you saw the Oakland schools millage is because counties can levy millages. What schools can do is request bonds, so it would have to be a public safety bond that the school requested, which is under a different tax bracket, and that would have to be on a cyclical cycle for the budgetary year.
And then they would borrow the money and then pay
It
the
would,
bond
it would
off
be under a
to.
bond, just like we did for the junior high.
I'm not familiar with that, so that's good that you, okay, so, but they would just have a different mechanism of generating the revenue for
But they do
safety.
not have they do not have the ability to ask for a millage like the township does.
But they could go out for a 4-year bond if they wanted
It's
to.
a bond
Yeah.
that they would have to
Okay.
ask
So it's-
for, which is different.
At the end of the day, it still comes out of cash flow.
Well, one's a loan,
Right.
the lend that you get, the other one is a millage that you request based on tax brackets and home values. I mean, they're different, you're pulling from
Right.
different sources of income,
How do they raise their,
Thank you.
sorry.
how do they raise their income every, year? How do they raise the school taxes?
They have, they have several different revenue sources. We took this off of their budget.
I just want to make sure they have the ability
They have
to
private
do
sources,
it,
state sources,
their
federal
own.
sources, ISD, Intermediate School District, I'm assuming ISD stands for,
Yes.
and athletics. So they have different venues for revenue to come in to be
Their
able to.
general fund is based on the state aid fund that's set at the governor level, which is a
Okay.
per pupil fund.
Oh, okay.
That's what was being asked to increase from the county ISD millage that voters said no to, was a per pupil.
Oh, they
general
wanted to
fund
add to what the
increase.
state gives them?
Correct.
I gotcha. Okay. Learning a lot, thank you.
Any other? It looks like you're, didn't raise your hand.
I had something on my mind and it, so I get, yeah, one point is, I don't think, absolutely, cannot just put what was on the ballot and say, we're gonna try again, it's November and cross our fingers. I don't think that's a winning recipe in any stretch. So whatever mixture we apply here has to look different from what we presented in August in aggregate. And yes, failed opportunities to host town halls, et cetera. I don't need a firm commitment, because I would be willing to do it by myself if I have to, but I think at the very least, whatever we do tonight warrants at least 2 town halls in the evening, after work hours, and whoever wants to engage it from
Per
the
month.
board. Well, that's fine with me, I'd be very happy to do that. But a minimum of at least, it's August, November, so a September, people are gonna watch this, I hope, September meeting, town hall, an October town hall, and maybe some adjunct opportunities leading into the election if there's additional questions. So I think information is power, and we missed the boat on that first go around, and that's where I stand.
Any other questions or comments? All right, so I'm gonna make a motion. It's a little bit different than what we had here, just kind of taking a general consensus of what I've heard, is that I would like to move to make a resolution to adopt the millage and the ballot language for, I'm gonna say the 3.2, where it's gonna be different, is that it will include the costs for the SRO to be phased out over a 4-year period, so the millage would be a 4-year period of time. Since I'm at the 4-year beginning in 2026, and authorize the township supervisor and township clerk in consultation with the township attorney, finance director, and assessor, if needed, to calculate the finalized ballot language consistent with the motion, and take any steps necessary to have this placed on the general election ballot of November 3rd, 2026. Do I have a second?
I would second that.
Okay. Then, Madam Clerk, can I get a roll call vote, please, just to make sure we're clear on this?
Clerk Newbeck, no. Treasurer Brown?
Yes?
Trustee Hayward?
Yes.
Trustee Morocco?
I like some, I don't like some.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with it, with a really robust education program that's gonna have to happen to do that, but I think we have the ability to pull it off, so I'm gonna vote yes on this.
Trustee Nalmathu?
Yes.
Trustee Tedder?
Yes.
Supervisor File?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Motion carried. Okay. So we'll work on that. I think that to back up the whole idea for the workshop, I do know that Clerk Newbeck is bringing forth in tomorrow's meeting. We get to come back again at 6. There is a motion on there to start holding town halls. So I think the forum will be there. It'll be part of the special rules to start handling those going forward, if I remember correctly from your motion. I don't want
We'll
to
talk about that tomorrow.
And
That's not on the agenda
Yep,
today.
hold tight for tomorrow. There we go.
Move to
Okay.
I'll
Final
second.
comments, right?
What was that? What?
We have motion to adjourn
Oh,
and a second.
No, hold on, we have 4 more comments.
Sorry, I forgot. I just said, okay.
I just,
Okay.
can I go over?
Thank you for coming.
If you haven't taken one of the handouts there about taxes, you want to take extras to hand to your friends, that'd be great too. If you haven't grabbed them up there, those are good handouts that give them to your neighbors. It helps understand how the taxes are spent, and we think that's important, that's all.
Okay, any other board comments? Trustee Hayward?
I just thought you were too nice on the county and what they've done with sticking it to the townships and what they've done as far as increasing, waiting to the last minute, coming up with programs that couldn't even explain to us what the programs were going to be for. And I just wanted to say that, you know, I'm disappointed in county leadership that they would do this without any kind of discussion or anything, so I just want that to be said. And if there's anybody here that would like to talk to me afterwards, I'll be sticking around, so.
I just
Trustee
want to make a
Morocco?
comment on the people that came. Thank you for coming. I think that this happened really fast, and I think that, you know, I think we can do a good job of getting the word out, you know. And it was a modest ask, only for what we need. So I'm hoping that it works out good. But I do want to say that I think that now that we've seen, when we don't have the we can't answer policy, we really get a lot of good input. You know, having these open meetings and having these Q&As is, it really gets us to the finish line, and everyone leaves understanding and not frustrated, and you know, and I think that's the, next time maybe if you could put out a spread or maybe some refreshments, that would be nice, but I think it really
You'll have
worked
to
out
pay
good, and
for
I'm
it.
glad that you answered the questions. I think that was super important for everyone to get all their questions answered tonight, for the people watching too, so.
Yeah, no, good meeting, difficult meeting. We had an important decision to make tonight. There was no ideal scenario to land on. The one thing I do believe is that we must maintain and support policing here in the township. And thinking this all through, I think the decision we ultimately came to tonight, whether it was comfortable or not, was most appropriate in that it provided the least painful approach to do that, achieve that very goal, to provide policing for township residents. I didn't hear a single word tonight that we don't need police, that there's contempt for the police or anything like that. I think our township truly appreciates our first responders. And tonight was an example of that. So looking forward to the town halls that will assemble and give our residents the voice they deserve.
Excellent. Trustee Now Matthew?
I agree with Trustee Hayward about the issue with the county and how we got in this position in the first place. And believe me, that was gonna be one of my huge things when these education town halls come about, because it was just a horrific way they played this, and it can't go unnoticed. And again, it takes the citizens, keep calling the news, keep pressuring that, because they can't just get away with it.
Anything
Now
else?
I can move to
Can I?
adjourn.
Yes.
I missed the public comment portion. Can I make something?
We're done with public comments.
Okay, can I
We'll
say
be-
something?
We'll be around.
We didn't do public comment, technically. You guys did Q&A, but you didn't do the 5-minute public comment.
That was in the very beginning. It was a combination of the
But that's
two.
for what's not on the agenda.
And then we did the public comment while we were talking about this, the whole
I'm
thing.
saying, I thought that was still the Q&A. So can I just ask something now that it's done?
If you want to make a public comment, you can make a public comment, and we don't have to respond, but if you want to ask a question, do you just want to make a comment?
Yes, I just want to ask something of the board.
At the
So-
microphone. You go to the
Oh, I'm sorry.
microphone. That's okay.
I didn't want it to be that formal. When you do the township meetings and the public education campaigns, what I would ask from all of you, and I'm asking this not even as my most important role as a mom to 2 kids in the public school district. I'm asking this in my professional role. I am the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office school liaison. I am the school liaison with the prosecutor's office for all 28 school districts. I am also a juvenile justice division prosecutor, meaning I prosecute kids who commit crimes under the age of 18. So I'm coming to you as a school safety expert. What I'm asking of all of you is to inform yourselves and educate yourselves on what SROs are and what they do in our community, so that when you talk to residents, you are not talking to them that our SROs are important because they have badges and guns. That is not their importance. They are protection for that, but their importance is prevention. And when you talk about pulling SROs out, or Mr. Morocco, when you state that we're supporting by the police millage, you're supporting on the outside, what that tells me, and I don't believe that this is your fault, is that you are not well informed on what an SRO is and the importance of an SRO in this community. Because let me tell you, when I get a petition request from a detective and they are an SRO in the school, that SRO, and the lieutenant will back me up on this, let's say it's an innocuous theft out of a locker. The SRO is handling that and in their deputy role while at the school district. If you don't have an SRO there, they are going to call Lieutenant Buckman and ask him to take a detective off road patrol to go report to that school and take the police report that the SRO would have done in 5 minutes. And now Lieutenant Buckman has to pull somebody off of road patrol to do a very innocuous police report that their SRO would have handled. So now you're double dipping on both when it comes to an SRO. And not only that, I have spent the last month of my life training over 300 school resource officers in this county. And I end my training every time by thanking them for their prevention efforts in the school. They are a mentor in the school. They are the trusted adult in the school. They're a credible messenger in the school. They're trauma informed. They're building relationships. So when I get a detective that says, we're requesting a charge on this juvenile, the first and usually only person I need to call as a prosecutor is the SRO in the school, and they can tell me everything that I need to know to not only charge the juvenile and get justice for the public and protect the victim's rights, but also ensure public safety in the school district. So I am a resource to you, I am a resource to our school district, but I am begging you to be an informed messenger and a credible messenger when it comes to the importance of school resource officers, because the public is going to look to you for that information when they're having this new millage on the ballot. And I thank you, Supervisor, for including the amendment to the millage. I think it's very important to give yourself the flexibility, and by you making that amendment tonight, I think it reflects your priorities in protecting our school districts. But lastly, my public comment is to the actual public, because the questions that were coming up here were honestly so disappointing that the school is somehow separate from this township. We have over 6,000 kids in this school district. Every one of them, minus maybe 50, is a resident of the township. These are not separate, and they are a disadvantaged community because they cannot vote. They do not have a voice in these meetings. So I would beg you all, the public included, to see these schools and the school community as a part of the township and not separate from the township. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, can we get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Opposed?